We are Globalstar. We're gonna show you how to do it. Yes, we are.
This is macOS Ken.
Amazon's buying Globalstar, Apple Business goes live, and Apple TV's got Margo's got money troubles. It is Wednesday, the 15th of April, 2026. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from macOS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Clean My Mac, keeping Macs running smoothly since 2008. Try 7 days free and use my code macOSKen20 for 20% off at clnmy.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Amazon's move to buy satellite services provider Globalstar is going ahead, and it's going with Apple's blessing. The Next Web says the e-commerce and digital services giant will buy Globalstar for roughly $11.6 billion in cash and stock. That will strengthen Apple's own low Earth orbit satellite services, cleverly called Amazon LEO. Low Earth orbit. The deal's not the kind of thing we would usually talk about here, except for Apple's part in it. Not only does Globalstar supply satellite services for iPhone and Apple Watch, Apple also owns or owned part of the company. According to the Next Web, Globalstar currently provides satellite services for iPhone 14 and later and Apple Watch Ultra 3 under a partnership backed by Apple's $1.5 billion investment in Globalstar in 2024. That gave Apple approximately a 20% equity stake and rights to 85% of Globalstar's network capacity. And now, things go on pretty much the way they have. Alongside the acquisition, the piece says Amazon and Apple have signed a separate agreement for Amazon LEO to continue powering satellite features on iPhone and Apple Watch, including emergency SOS via satellite, messages, Find My, and roadside assistance. The acquisition has been approved by a majority of Globalstar's shareholders. The deal is expected to close in 2027, according to the report, subject to regulatory approval. So, who knows then? BofA analyst Wamsi Mohan is expecting good things for Apple's March quarter earnings. Seeking Alpha had the analyst issuing a note this week wherein he predicted strong 2Q results when numbers are reported week after next. Driving that train, iPhone 17 demand and services, with perhaps a shot of optimism over coming quarters. Quoting his note, "We see upside to street estimates given continued strong sales of iPhone, double-digit growth in services revenues, and benefit from foreign exchange rates. Upcoming catalysts include expected new buyback authorization, WWDC in June, and launch of a foldable iPhone in the fall, and the launch of an enhanced Siri with integration with Gemini AI, which can drive higher upgrades." You know, if Apple had a sense of humor, they'd change its name to Zarquan or Godot or Zarquan. Mr. Mohan used Tuesday's note to raise his firm's iPhone expectations for the March quarter. They had been expecting sales of 58 million units. Those are now up to 60 million. He's expecting revenue growth for services of 14% year over year, according to Seeking Alpha, despite concerns over what he calls relatively weak App Store revenue. Still, everything else is running full tilt. The BofA analyst reiterated his buy rating on Apple shares on Tuesday. He also raised his 12-month price target on the shares from $320 to $325. Apple Business is open for business. Announced last month, Apple said then that the program would combine built-in mobile device management, business email and calendar services with custom domain support, and ads for Apple Maps in one honkin' platform. I'm paraphrasing. The company had said that Apple Business would go live in over 200 countries, including the US, on Tuesday, the 14th of April, which was yesterday. And guess what happened then? A piece from Apple Insider says Apple on Tuesday made its newly refurbished business tools available for download, giving businesses ways to manage company devices, employees, and more. You know, the overuse of the term "and more" makes me want to spit, retch, and more. The Apple Business Tools are free with plenty of ways to pay Apple anyway. You can buy upgraded iCloud and support with Apple Care Plus for business. You can purchase custom domains if you made it this far without having any of your own. And of course, you can buy ads in Apple Maps. Actually, that part's probably coming later. Ads hit Apple Maps in Canada and the US, beginning sometime this summer. Apple Business is free to start, though. Folks who want to take it for a spin can do so. Apple Insider says sysrecs include a Mac with macOS 12.0 or later, an iPhone with iOS 15 or later, and or an iPad with iPadOS 15 or later. Public testing people, it is your time at the plate. A day after the second developer betas of blankOS 26.5 were seeded, a piece from Mac Rumors says same again for Apple's public testing program. Mostly. The second public betas of version 26.5 of iOS, iPadOS, watchOS, and tvOS are said to be out to Apple's public beta program. Not mentioned in the mix are macOS 26.5, guess it's back to being wacky, and visionOS 26.5. Apple's Headset OS has never joined the public testing party to this point. If you're part of the fun, you know what to do. If you're not, but wish you were, info on the public beta program is available at beta.apple.com. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Clean My Mac, keeping Macs running smoothly since 2008. From our cars to our homes to our own physical selves, the things on which we rely need maintenance. That is just as true for our Macs. For those, there's an easy solution. Clean My Mac. At the push of a virtual button, Clean My Mac goes to work with a suite of optimization essentials meant to keep your Mac running smoothly. Blocking malware, cleaning out junk, and when things do go sideways, offering quick, practical fixes to get them straightened out. Clean My Mac concentrates on your Mac so you can concentrate on what you're doing with it. Try it for yourself and get tidy today. Try 7 days free and use my code MacOSKen20 for 20% off at clnmy.com/MacOSKen. Make macOSKen all caps in both places. That way they know where you heard about it and you get the discount. Try 7 days free and use my code MacOSKen20 for 20% off at clnmy.com/MacOSKen. Again, MacOSKen is all caps, both places. Use code MacOSKen20 for 20% off at clnmy.com/MacOSKen. Hey, remember back in January when lawmakers, rights advocates, and generally decent people were calling out Twitter's chatbot Grok for generating non-consensual, sexualized images of people, and calling out Apple for leaving it in the App Store, despite behavior that definitely went against Apple's own App Store rules and maybe broke the law. Yeah, turns out Apple was maybe working behind the scenes to get Grok to stop it. Also, looks like it didn't work, but at least Apple tried or something. 9to5Mac highlights a paywalled NBC News report on a letter sent from Apple to U.S. senators. Guess what? While Apple was quiet about the whole thing publicly, the letter to the senators says the company found Twitter and Grok in violation of its guidelines and privately threatened to remove Grok from the App Store. It took Apple less than a day to remove Fortnite from the App Store when Epic broke the rules. Of course, that was screwing with Apple's money, not the rights of individual users. According to the report, according to 9to5Mac, Apple contacted the teams behind both Twitter and Grok after it received complaints and saw news coverage of the scandal, requiring the app developers to create a plan to improve content moderation. The letter says Twitter got the Twitter changes right away, though Grok took a couple of tries before it met with App Store approval. Worth noting, though, both got to stay in the App Store the whole time. Meanwhile, 9to5Mac cites a separate piece from NBC News, also published yesterday, that says Grok continues to generate sexualized images of people without their consent. According to the piece, the second report notes that although the volume of images has decreased significantly from January, a subset of users is still able to get around the restrictions to put women in more revealing clothing such as towels, sports bras, skin-tight Spider-Woman outfits, or bunny costumes. News about Apple is really fun until you remember with whom they are in bed, to whom they will acquiesce. Well, I'm sure the people who were violated are happy to learn months later that Apple was behind the scenes going, "Oh, come on, guys." News out of Europe on a big Apple store and a great big Apple museum. We'll start with the store. A piece from Mac Rumors has the Cupertino company planning one of its largest European stores for Zurich, Switzerland. Building permits indicate the relocation of an existing store that doesn't actually exist currently. Designated in planning docs as a Bahnhofstrasse relocation, the piece says it was an open secret when Apple left Bahnhofstrasse that the company was seeking a significantly larger space. A secret source tells Mac Rumors that the current Renwig store was planned as a temporary location, so this would apparently replace that, which I guess replaced the other. Construction on the new-ish location is expected to run through early next year. It's unclear whether both floors of the new-ish location will be used as sales floors. If they are, the total retail footprint would rank the store among the largest Apple locations in Europe, according to the report. Off now to the Netherlands, where a new museum celebrates Apple's past rather than trying to sell you its future. Mac Rumors posted a piece late last week on the country's aptly named Apple Museum. According to the piece, the museum's creator claims that the space features one of the largest Apple collections in the world, and it has several rooms dedicated to Apple's design. There's an eye-catching rainbow wall of iMac G3 machines, a recreation of the garage Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak worked in, an iPod display, and more. Admission for adults is €21.50, roughly $25 US. If you go, get me a postcard. And if they don't have postcards, demand your money back. And finally today, and a bit of cruelty for tax day, Apple TV has a new show. That's not the cruel part. They're a TV channel. They're expected to have new shows. No, the cruel part is the title. On tax day, Apple TV releases Margo's Got Money Troubles. 9to5Mac reminds us this is the dramedy about a college student who drops out when she has a baby. Margo's mom is an ex-Hooters waitress. Her dad's an ex-pro wrestler. Her baby's a baby. And she is an aspiring writer who, faced with money troubles, turns to an OnlyFans-type site to make ends meet. Michelle Pfeiffer plays Margo's mom. Nick Offerman plays her dad. Elle Fanning plays Margo, with some baby playing her baby. The first 3 episodes of Margo's Got Money Troubles are available to stream now on Apple TV. macOS Can, brought to you by me and sponsored by Clean My Mac, keeping Macs running smoothly since 2008. Try 7 days free and use my code MacOSCan20 for 20% off at clny.com/MacOSCan. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. Advertising handle by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can find me on Mastodon, macOSCan at mastodon.social. You can also send me an email, info@macoscan.com. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Leonard likes this post.